They kicked out the woman whose name was on the building without even asking who she was, and she let them. Angela Rivers stepped into the marble lobby of Rivers National Bank, a place she built from nothing. Her white blazer caught the morning light. Her bag, brown leather, carried only two things: a sealed document and power no one could see. The man behind the desk didn't flinch. "Ma'am, this area is restricted," he barked. "Staff only. You'll need to exit." Angela blinked, calm. Before she could finish, a louder voice came slicing through the air. "Security!" Jared Sloan, the branch manager, charged in. "Who let her in? This is not a public lounge." Angela didn't move. One hand rested on the front counter. "Loiterers aren't allowed beyond this point," he snapped, eyes narrowing. "You people need to stop testing boundaries." His words hung sharp. The room fell silent. A security guard approached. A police officer stepped in from the side. "Ma'am," the officer said cautiously, "we're going to need you to leave." Angela looked at him. No fear, no panic, just disappointment. She reached into her bag. Not for ID, not for proof, but her phone. One tap. A single message sent. Then she turned to Jared. "You have 5 minutes," she whispered, and walked out. Behind the desk, a young black woman was already recording. Her hands trembled, her lips parted, stunned. They didn't recognize her, didn't care, didn't notice the embossed initials on her bag, AR. But they would, because the woman they just kicked out, she didn't just run the bank, she ran the system that kept their entire industry breathing, and 5 minutes was all it would take to remind them. Angela didn't look back as the glass doors closed behind her. She didn't need to. The message she'd just sent didn't go to her assistant. It went to FIES Command, a secure regulatory backbone she'd personally architected. The code was simple: FIES lock, Tier 1 freeze, immediate. At that exact moment, 14 miles away inside a downtown data center, the lights on a secure terminal flashed red. Within 45 seconds, automated alerts were pinged to the top 5 partner banks connected to Rivers National. By the 2-minute mark, $1.1 billion in interbank credit flow was placed under ethical review. All they saw was a red banner. FIES compliance hold. Rivers node compromised. Action required. Inside the bank lobby, Jared Sloan leaned on the counter, adjusting his tie. He was still fuming. "I swear, people think they can just walk in here and—" He stopped mid-sentence. The security guard who had stood beside Angela moments earlier returned from the elevator bay, his face pale. "Sir, I think you need to see this." Jared followed him to the side console, normally used to monitor internal system updates. Now it was flashing with security flags, blocked transactions, frozen transfers. "Why is Ops offline?" Jared snapped. The young woman behind the desk cleared her throat. "Sir, she said we had 5 minutes." Jared turned sharply. "Who? The loiterer?" "She's not a loiterer," her voice shook. "That was Angela Rivers." He blinked. "Angela, what?" Suddenly his email chimed. FIES notice. Ethical trigger initiated. Branch status under review. He looked back at the main doors, but Angela was long gone. And somewhere, deep in the national system, the machine she built was waking up. Not for revenge, but for correction. Exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds after Angela walked out, a black SUV rolled up to the curb. No sirens. No noise. Just presence. The driver stepped out and opened the door. Angela emerged, shoulders squared, eyes ahead. Same calm energy, but now she wasn't alone. 2 men in navy blue suits flanked her. One was Samuel Price, head of legal affairs at Rivers National. The other, Noah Elridge, chair of the board. Behind them, 2 more stepped out. Compliance officers from FIES, unannounced, unmistakable. They entered through the executive side entrance, a door Jared Sloan didn't even have access to. Inside the lobby, the air grew heavy. The young woman behind the counter glanced at the security feed. and gasped. "She's back," she whispered. Jared looked up from his screen, confused. "Who?" The feed showed Angela walking through the private corridor, flanked by authority. One by one, staff stood up from their desks, some out of respect, some out of fear. Angela didn't break stride. Her heels echoed down the marble floor like a quiet warning. She didn't pause at the lobby, didn't speak to Jared, didn't even look at him. Instead, she turned to the young woman still holding her phone. "Did you get all of it?" Angela asked. The girl nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am. Every second." Angela nodded once. "Good." Then she walked into the boardroom, like she never left. Jared stood frozen behind the desk, his mouth half open, face drained of color. She came in through the executive wing," the officer near him asked. "Wait, if she's the founder, then why are we here?" No one had the answer, but they were about to get one. And for Jared Sloan, it wouldn't come with an apology. It would come with a termination letter and a new rule book he never imagined. The boardroom was glass-walled and silent until the door opened. Angela stepped in first. She didn't sit. She didn't have to. Samuel Price took the seat to her right. Noah Elridge opened a slim black folder and laid it on the table. Inside, a real-time compliance map showing every contract, account, and transfer now frozen under FIES Tier 1 lockdown. Angela scanned the faces around the table. 9 senior executives of Rivers National. Some she'd hired. Others had grown distant over the years. They were all here now, and they all looked nervous. "Where's Jared Sloan?" Angela asked, voice calm. One of the VPs cleared her throat. "Still downstairs, ma'am. He hasn't been called up yet." Angela nodded. "Good. Let's not waste time." She turned to the legal director. "Effective immediately, Mr. Sloan is suspended pending internal ethics investigation. Grounds: racial profiling, leadership misconduct, and gross violation of client dignity protocol." No emotion, just process. A beat passed, then another. Finally, one board member spoke. "Angela, this is escalating quickly. Don't you think we should wait until—" "No." Her tone didn't rise, but it didn't bend either. "We don't wait when a client is humiliated, especially not when that client built this institution." Silence. Angela looked toward the compliance team. "I want every transaction reviewed, every flag, and I want our ethics impact score recalculated with real data, not optics." She turned to Noah. "I assume you've briefed FIES?" "We have. They're watching this meeting live." Angela nodded once. Then, only then, she sat. And for the first time since the morning began, she let herself exhale. Not in defeat, in control. Jared Sloan stood stiff behind the front desk, refreshing the dashboard like it might suddenly fix itself. Every time he hit the keyboard, the same red banner flashed across the screen. FIES override. Access restricted. He turned to the officer still lingering nearby. "Is she really the Angela Rivers?" The officer gave a short nod. "She walked in like she owned the place. Turns out, she does." Just then, the elevator dinged. 2 men in navy suits stepped out, both wearing FIES badges. One held a sealed envelope. "Mr. Sloan?" the taller one asked. Jared straightened. "Yes? You've been formally suspended from all managerial duties pending internal review. You'll need to vacate the premises immediately." Jared blinked. Wait, no one even asked for my side. This is insane." The man didn't blink. "Your badge access has already been revoked." Behind the desk, the young black woman from earlier watched silently. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. Jared turned to her. "You could have said something," he muttered. She raised an eyebrow. "Like what? That the woman you humiliated is the reason we all have jobs?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Security escorted him toward the back hallway. He looked up once at the polished glass wall where the name Rivers National Bank gleamed in gold. And for the first time, he noticed something he'd never paid attention to before. Just beneath the logo, in tiny, engraved letters, founded by Angela Rivers, 2007. And just like that, the man who thought he ran the building was gone from it, not with a bang, but with silence. While Jared was being escorted out, Angela was already 3 steps ahead. Inside the boardroom, the FIES compliance officer pulled up a mirrored dashboard on the screen. It showed 5 national banks, each one connected to Rivers National via interbank lending networks. All 5 are now under conditional freeze, the officer said, pending ethics clearance. Angela nodded. And their funds? $1.1 billion in credit chains, on hold, liquidity compromised. Angela didn't flinch. Issue immediate notice. FIES Code 47, pre-clearance suspension. Samuel glanced at her. You sure about this? These are partner institutions. Angela's voice stayed steady. Partners don't let racism stand unchecked. If they want access to capital, they follow the code. At that moment, alerts started firing. Emails, phone calls, encrypted messages from compliance desks across New York, D.C. and San Francisco. The ripple was hitting fast. Meanwhile, on the 19th floor of Meridian Trust Bank in Manhattan, their CFO stared at his screen. Why are we locked out of Rivers? He barked. FIES flagged them. Tier 1 freeze, someone answered. And we're tied to them through our ESG pipeline. Across the country, similar scenes unfolded. Portland, Miami, Chicago. Calls poured in, but Angela didn't answer any. She didn't need to. She had already rewritten the rules. Back in the Dallas boardroom, one VP stood up. Angela, with respect, what happens if they push back? Angela looked up. Then they're saying loud and clear, money matters more than dignity, and that's all I'll need to know. The room went quiet again, not out of fear, but clarity. Angela didn't just freeze money. She'd exposed which institutions were built on silence and dared them to keep it. By noon, the story had spread faster than the freeze itself. Forbes broke it first. Black CEO kicked out of her own bank. 5 minutes later, 111B freezes across 5 institutions. Then came Bloomberg, CNBC, and finally, the New York Times. Headlines lit up screens in trading floors, law firms, and government offices across the country. Angela Rivers began trending. Clips from inside the bank lobby, recorded by the young woman at the desk, circulated within hours. The footage showed Jared barking orders, Angela standing still, security stepping in. Then her final words, "You have 5 minutes." That line hit like a thunderclap. On LinkedIn, professionals reposted the video with captions like, "When grace holds more power than arrogance." She didn't raise her voice, she raised the standard. By 2 p.m., protesters began gathering outside 3 major banks tied to the freeze. Signs read, "Dignity isn't optional. Follow the code or lose the cash." Inside those banks, CEOs scrambled. Conference rooms filled. Phones rang non-stop. Legal teams asked the same question. Can she really do this? And the answer kept coming back. Yes, she could. She already had. Back in Dallas, Angela sat quietly in her office. The view overlooked the city skyline. She wasn't watching the news. She wasn't checking her name online. She was reviewing a draft, the first version of something bigger, the Dignity Charter, a new standard of ethics for the entire financial sector. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just read, revised, and made it stronger. Because Angela didn't need revenge. She needed change. And now, the whole country was finally listening. Angela stood at the head of the conference room, sleeves rolled, no podium, no press, just her. A handful of executives, lawyers, and compliance officers sat in front of her, representing 5 national banks and 2 lending consortiums. No one touched their coffee. No one spoke first. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I'm not here to negotiate," Angela began. "I'm here to offer you clarity." She placed a thick bound document on the table. The Dignity Charter. It was 42 pages long. Simple language. no legal fluff. But every page cut straight through the old way of doing business. From this point forward, Angela said, any institution connected to Rivers National or participating in our interbank lending platform will be required to sign and implement the charter. A man from Eastwood Bank leaned forward. And if we don't? Angela looked directly at him. You stay frozen. Another VP shifted uncomfortably. You're asking us to overhaul decades of operational culture in, what, a week? Angela didn't blink. I'm not asking. I'm offering a path forward. She walked around the table, calm, deliberate. The Dignity Charter isn't just about race, she continued. It's about who gets to be safe when they walk into a room, who gets to be seen, heard, taken seriously. Someone muttered under their breath, "This is overreach." Angela paused. Overreach, she repeated, is dragging a black woman out of the lobby of the bank she built because your staff made assumptions. Silence. She tapped a line from the charter projected on the wall. Ethical access is non-negotiable. Dignity is not a perk. It is the price of participation. Angela turned back to them. You want access to capital? You want trust from the communities you claim to serve? Then act like you deserve it. One exec raised a hand. What happens if we agree, but others don't? Doesn't that fracture the network? Angela nodded. Yes, it does. But a fractured network rooted in truth is stronger than a unified one built on silence. Another asked, is there a deadline? Angela held up 3 fingers. 72 hours. After that, your access to shared capital dissolves permanently, and you'll be marked as non-compliant in the FIES registry. A collective inhale passed through the room. Angela gathered her notes. Your leaders, start leading. Then she turned and walked out. No applause, no cameras, just firm footsteps and a door closing behind her. Outside, the young woman from the lobby waited with a quiet smile. Angela handed her a sealed copy of the charter. Deliver this to our ethics office. You're assisting the implementation team starting tomorrow. The girl blinked. Me? Angela smiled. You saw what mattered. That's where change starts. And with that, she walked away, not just as a CEO, but as the woman who rewrote the rules the industry thought were untouchable. 17 hours after the Dignity Charter was introduced, the first bank caved. Crest Hill Union, a regional player with over 180 dollars in ESG-linked contracts, quietly signed the charter just after 3 a.m. Their CEO didn't call. He didn't send a memo. He just signed, uploaded the compliance form, and hoped no one noticed how fast they'd folded. But people noticed. By noon the next day, 4 more banks followed. 1 in Seattle, 2 in Chicago, and another in Miami. It wasn't about belief, it was about survival. FIES had already begun updating the public ethics ledger, a platform used by rating agencies, federal auditors, and institutional investors. Each time a bank signed, it was marked compliant. Each bank that didn't, flagged in yellow. Pending ethical risk assessment. Then came the red flags. Non-compliant. Access frozen. Reputation under review. The list was live. Real-time. Open to the public. On Twitter, financial watchdogs were posting side-by-side comparisons. Guess who cares about dignity? And guess who just lost $72 in funding yesterday? #Dignity Score @Angela Effect. Angela watched it all unfold from her office, but never joined the noise. Instead, she met quietly with her implementation team. The charter isn't punishment, she told them. It's pressure, a mirror. If they fail the reflection test, that's on them. Meanwhile, the resistance had started. 3 CEOs, older white men from old money banks, held a joint press conference calling the charter a dangerous overstep of regulatory power. Angela didn't respond. She didn't have to. That same evening, one of their core investors pulled out, citing misalignment with ethical impact goals. The bank's stock dropped 11% by morning. By day 3, more than 70 financial institutions had signed. And that's when the unexpected happened. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, OCC, issued a public notice recommending that future federal lending evaluations consider the Dignity Charter standards as part of their review. It wasn't law yet, but it was a spark. Suddenly, following Angela's code wasn't just about staying off the FIES list. It was about staying relevant in an industry shifting beneath its own feet. At Rivers National, staff gathered to watch the live compliance tracker tick upward. There were no cheers, just quiet pride. And at the front desk, the young woman who filmed everything now wore a badge of her own. Ethics Implementation Associate. She adjusted her nameplate, smiled to herself, and whispered, "You really gave them 5 minutes, huh?" Angela passed by, caught the comment, and replied without stopping. Longer than some of them deserved. By the end of the week, the financial world wasn't asking if the Dignity Charter would last. They were asking what came next. Angela already knew. She stood before a private roundtable of government regulators, federal ethics officials, and senior voices from the OCC, SEC, and FDIC. No cameras, no PR team. Just her and the people who shaped the rules behind the curtains. "This isn't about Angela Rivers," she told them plainly. "This is about what we've allowed to pass as acceptable in an industry that claims to serve the public." One official cleared his throat. "You've forced change faster than anything we've seen in the last decade. But if this charter becomes a benchmark, are you ready for what happens when people start challenging it?" Angela smiled, tight, controlled. "They already are," she said. "And they're losing." She slid a folder across the table. Inside, a proposal to formally integrate the Dignity Charter Compliance Index, DCCI, into future lending review processes, ESG ratings, and interbank clearance requirements. One regulator raised an eyebrow. "So, the charter becomes infrastructure?" Angela nodded. "It already is. I'm just giving it structure." Silence fell. Not the kind born of resistance, but the kind that follows realization. They weren't watching a CEO build policy. They were watching her solidify it. Back at Rivers National, her team began integrating the DCCI framework into their core architecture. Banks that had signed the charter were now granted green tier access to preferential credit networks. Non-signers, flagged, delayed, reviewed, penalized. It was the final shift, not a freeze, a filter. You didn't just lose access. You got left behind. News broke the next morning. DCCI confirmed Angela Rivers' ethics standard to influence $3.4 trillion in U.S. lending decisions. Markets blinked, then pivoted. Consulting firms restructured offerings overnight to help banks align with dignity standards. An anonymous whistleblower leaked a memo from inside one of the resistant banks. It read, "Rivers has done what no one at the top expected. She made dignity measurable, and now we're on the wrong side of the math." Meanwhile, Angela declined every interview request. She let the charter speak. At a staff town hall, someone asked her, "Do you think this will stick?" Angela didn't hesitate. "If it doesn't stick, it's because we didn't hold the line. Power protects power, but people, we have to choose to protect each other." That night, she walked the halls of her building alone, the same marble floor where she'd once stood, humiliated, judged, erased. Now, it echoed under her steps, not with triumph, but with purpose. Because for Angela, the goal was never to punish. It was to make sure that no one else would ever have to earn basic respect with a resume. 2 weeks after the DCCI went live, the landscape of American finance looked unfamiliar. Not because everything had changed, but because the people who refused to change were quietly disappearing. It didn't make headlines. There were no viral videos, no public walkouts, no corporate apologies. Just one resignation email after another. Gordon Whiteman, former CEO of Larchstone Holdings, the same man who had scoffed at the Dignity Charter on national television, retired for personal health reasons. 2 days later, his firm signed the charter under interim leadership. Barbara Franks, head of compliance at Union Trust, stepped down citing strategic misalignment. Her replacement? A black woman from their internal ethics board. Jared Sloan? Gone. Not rehired, not relocated. Just gone. His name removed from internal systems. His former branch quietly announced a structural reorganization. No fanfare, no plaque. Angela hadn't asked for their removal. She didn't have to. The system took care of its own pruning. But while the old guard slipped into shadows, a different kind of leader began rising. At Rivers National's Dallas branch, the young woman who filmed the lobby incident, Tiana Monroe, now sat in the assistant branch manager's office. She didn't come from money. She didn't have an Ivy League degree, but she had judgment, decency, a spine. Angela passed by her office on a Friday afternoon, knocking lightly on the door. "You settling in okay?" Tiana stood, eyes wide. "Yes, ma'am. It's a lot, but good." Angela smiled. "That's how you know it's real." Tiana hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. When they treated you like that in the lobby, how did you stay so calm?" Angela paused, thought for a moment. "Because I knew something they didn't," she said quietly. "That the real power doesn't come from raising your voice. It comes from knowing exactly when to use your silence." Tiana nodded slowly, like she was tucking that truth into her chest for later. Elsewhere, the public ethics ledger ticked forward. Over 140 institutions had now integrated DCCI standards. International banks in Canada, the UK, and even Singapore began reaching out for inclusion. The World Economic Ethics Forum invited Angela to keynote their fall summit. She declined. Instead, she nominated 3 mid-level compliance officers from 3 different countries, all women of color, to speak in her place. "I've had my turn," she told the forum chair. "Now give them the mic." Her team at Rivers didn't always understand the way she moved, why she avoided the spotlight, why she never clapped back at critics, why she refused to monetize her moment. But they didn't need to understand it all. They just needed to watch. Because in the months following the freeze, Angela had taught them something far more valuable than policy. She taught them how to rebuild a system without shouting over it. Back at her Chicago office, Angela kept a box under her desk. Inside were copies of every letter she'd ever received from women who'd been overlooked, mistreated, passed over, erased. One of them read, "I saw you stand still while they disrespected you, and then I watched you rewrite the rules. Thank you for giving us all 5 minutes." Angela folded that letter back into the box, sat for a moment, then stood. Out in the hallway, 2 interns, first-year analysts, stopped talking as she passed. One looked like she wanted to speak, but hesitated. Angela turned. "What's your name?" "Reena," the girl answered, nervous. "Reena Patel." Angela nodded. "You ever feel like people don't see you until it's too late?" Reena's eyes widened. "Yes, all the time." Angela smiled. "Good. Use that. Make it the reason they can't ignore you next time." And with that, she kept walking, heels steady, mind sharper than ever. Behind her, a system kept shifting. Not because it was forced to, but because someone finally showed the industry what dignity in motion looked like. The lobby looked the same. Same marble floors, same golden light filtering in from the glass facade. Same desk where Angela had once stood in silence, dismissed, doubted, disrespected. But today, there was one new detail. A plaque, brushed steel, mounted to the wall just beneath the Rivers National seal. It didn't list accomplishments. No resume, no timeline. Just one line. Dignity doesn't wait for permission. Angela Rivers. Angela stood a few steps back, arms folded, watching as a small group of employees gathered around the plaque. No speeches, no ceremony, just reflection. Tiana stood beside her, now confidently wearing her new title. "They asked if you wanted to unveil it yourself," she said. Angela shook her head. "I didn't write it for me. I wrote it for whoever gets told they don't belong. Across the city, across the country, across oceans, banks, startups, regulators, and watchdogs now reference the Dignity Charter not as a trend, but as infrastructure, a new baseline, a line in stone. The media still tried to frame Angela as the woman who flipped the system, but anyone who knew her knew the truth. She didn't flip anything. She reset it, rewired the foundation, without yelling, without begging. With 5 minutes, one look, and a standard no one could unsee again. As Angela turned to leave the lobby, she passed a new hire standing near the entrance. Young, unsure, trying to find her place. Angela offered a nod. The girl straightened instantly, because now people paid attention, not to the noise, but to the quiet that follows a name built on principles. Angela Rivers didn't just walk back into her bank, she walked into legacy. And this time, she wasn't alone. If you've ever been judged before someone even knew your name, this story was for you. Have you ever had to stay quiet just to protect your power, or seen someone underestimated until the moment they rewrote the rules? Tell us where you're watching from, and more importantly, tell us, what would you have done in Angela's place? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Someone out there might need your story too. And if you felt that power shift, that moment when silence became justice, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to be reminded. Dignity isn't negotiable.